not a competition, not a challenge. Everything that you encounter during your recruiting process should be your catalyst. That means it will probably change you for you to succeed in that situation. And Beth Van Fleet from Georgia State talks about team dynamics, talks about blue collar ethic that's important for playing D1, discusses the freshman transition, and gives a great advice on how to turn mental struggle into competitive advantage. If you battle with confidence, this is your handbook.
Oh, how are you, Beth?
I'm doing great. I'm gonna try and move me up here so I don't look down too much.
However, you feel like if it will help me figure out what is your secret sauce to cook this fabulous steak.
Well, over there, that's our whole team on the board, and that's how we design practices every day. This is my favorite board in my office right now. So one of the things that we're working on, I don't know if you can see everything here.
I can see it.
Mental toughness, strategy implementation, and skill execution and strategy implementation. So I made a little Venn diagram and then started putting like different drills where they are to figure out how we can train a little bit more effectively next semester. Because it's really interesting. We have a lot of different like dimension of like how hard people want to compete and who wants more pressure and who needs less pressure, and trying to meet them where they are.
Beth, thank you so much for taking the time. I talked to Ari recently.
She's amazing.
She's amazing. And we talked, about all sorts of things, and recruiting was one of them. And she said, oh, but when Beth comes to the court, that's like a dagger to the heart. I know, I just lost a recruit. And
oh, that's so funny. It's so true. So many of us feel like that. You're like, oh no, you're here. I feel like so many of us recruit against or with, however you want to say it. Like we all identify similar attributes and qualities in humans. And some tournaments you're just like, oh, let's just spend the whole day together recruiting on all the courts at the same time. But I love that. Yes.
And also watching your diagram. First of all, I thought that was the philosophy of Ikigai, but you guys are putting it so nicely. I have so many questions, and you have such a beautiful personality, and the way you are able to express things is so just wonderful. So I'm like looking forward to this.
Thank you so much. I feel like as coaches, we all learn so much from each other, because I think there's not, well, Angela Roth did write the book on how to play beach volleyball, which I love. Like, I literally love that you can say, oh, you wrote the book on how to do it. But like how to create this sport as a team sport in a college space where it never exists as a team sport, I think is something that all of us as college coaches just really lean in on each other and learn together. And so when we get to do clinics and things like that, I feel like I'm paying so much more attention to other coaches sometimes. Like, ooh, what can I take away from this, and how can I learn with this person?
Exactly. And you've been at Georgia State since the beginning, and there is not many coaches that have walked the walk and talked the talk and are able or are still living their own legacy. Like, I don't know, Marcio at Pepperdine, Todd Rogers at Cal Poly now. And so these powerhouses, and it does not necessarily mean results-wise, but it means that the culture and the philosophy and the whole understanding of what it means to play beach volleyball at college, what it means to play D1 sport, and what kind of decision and what kind of aftermath or consequences these decisions brings with it. It's just so phenomenal to talk to you guys. It's something like from the secret vault of, I don't know, this
getting into everybody's mindset. And I think it's incredible what you are building too. I was looking around on the website, and just how what you're doing, I think too, is like so specific and so holistic in the sense of really helping people to navigate this process. And the recruiting process is really scary. And I think it's truly the first time in life where kids, their parents can't help them to not fail. And that's a scary time, and it's a hard time to like be in that grind. And for a lot of families, they're only going through it once. So it's not like you're in this repeat cycle. Oh, I learned from this one and I can apply what I learned. It's truly like families trusting you to help guide them through the process, and hoping that the college coaches are helpful as well. So I just think it's really neat, because it always like hurts my heart a little bit when we're at clinics and you see how stressed some of the athletes are in the process. And I feel like they show up to clinics to be their best, but they also, I think at all times, feel like the people around them are also their competition, when in a lot of cases the people around them are their catalyst to growth. And I feel like sometimes it's hard to see that when they're in the middle of it.
Wow, I think you just dropped one of the biggest golden nuggets, and that is, at least for me, that's how I perceive it. When you are able to label or rename what's happening, as you said, it's not a competitor, but it's a catalyst, and it doesn't matter whether it's in a form of a coach, college coach, your club coach, a parent teacher, or another recruit. It's just a catalyst that's helping you get somewhere, right?
100%.
Yeah, this is wonderful. This is going to be so good. Like everybody's chasing the big brands and logos, and they talk D1. They are thinking top 8 teams.
Sure.
But there's like 60 teams where they can
so
play.
many.
And then there's D2, great academics, the same D3. And
there's so many opportunities. Yeah.
And people don't understand that. So
yeah, I was just having a conversation with one of my college teammates. Her kids are in the recruiting process, and she was like, oh, well, D1. And I was like, well, why D1? Because I feel like everybody thinks they're supposed to go for D1. And I was telling her, I was like, well, in beach volleyball, we have the ABCA Small Schools Championship. And to me, when like competing for a national title, whether it's the beach volleyball national title or the small schools, it's still that experience. And I think there's so much value in the lessons that you learn in that process and the connections you make with teammates. And so like, that was the big question we were throwing around. It's like, okay, so do you rather go to the NCAA tournament and potentially lose first round, or do you prefer to go to the small schools and play 3 days of great competition and get in like 6 duels, and just see what you're made of? And so I think there are so many spaces for people to compete. And for sure, there are those athletes that absolutely belong in D1 at the highest level. But the vast majority, it's like, figure out what experience you want to have and then go figure out where you can make that happen.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. How do you define success before before this season, and how that definition has changed throughout the years?
Okay. So I would say, one, I love this question because I do think it evolves every year. And I think success is different for the individual and the team. And I would say, me personally as a coach, like the success is when people want to come back to your team the next year. The success is when you can survive the losses and survive the wins, and when they foster relationships that last past college. So for example, I was just in Arizona on Saturday for a wedding, and there were 8 alum there. So one of the girls was getting married, and there were 8 people from our team that spanned several different classes, but they found each other in college and made such incredible connections. And so I think that's a huge piece of success, is that, yes, we want to be, when we're here, we want to be doing our best. We want to be giving our best effort. We want to control the controllables and all of that in the athletic space. But success is so much bigger than, are you winning 75% of your duels? Are you winning at the highest level? Like, that's definitely a huge piece of how we're being measured. But I think the successful part is, what is your team GPA? What are you going to get to do after college? What doors are going to be opened because of the effort you put in the 4 years that you're here?
That's wonderful. That's a very holistic description. Did this change throughout the years, the way you were looking at it and the way you were evaluating it? Because
100%.
to be honest, you are a competitor, right? You are like a winning machine. You want to win. I see it on you. You're like, I hate losing.
Right.
Beth hates losing. And so, how you put that aspect of winning in there in the holistic puzzle.
Sure. So when I first started, so I was hired here at Georgia State in 2010. And I worked with the indoor team for 2010, 2011, so I could learn all the NCAA rules, which now don't matter anymore. And 2011, 2012, I got to recruit our team for beach volleyball. And then 2012, our inaugural team was on campus. And all I had to use was my college experience and my professional playing experience. And when I was playing on the AVP, I was definitely more of a grinder than like an elite athlete. And I remember training with Angela Rock, and she'd be like, just do an athletic move. And I was like, so like, how would it be with my left foot or my right foot? She's like, just be an athlete. I'm like, I'm not sure that I have that skill. I can just work really hard if you tell me where my feet go. And so I very much believed in putting in the work and then kind of reaping the rewards of the work. And so when we first set up our program here, it was very, very competitive, to the point of like, hey, I want to be in your position so I can challenge you at practice on Wednesdays. And if I beat you, I take your position. And we created this space with our inaugural team that like they were dogs, and they would fight, and they weren't afraid to be combative, and they would engage in conflict, and they would argue. And I think they developed so many skills that I think young women are trained not to develop, because we're supposed to smile and get along and play nice. And it was a really interesting space. And what we found is that team, in their junior and senior year, we went to the national championship. We got to go to Gulf Sports both of those years. And then after that, as people started getting married, nobody was inviting anyone to their weddings. And so there's a couple of them that created some friendships, but for the most part, success for me early in my career was win. Winners win, win. And I messed up a lot. And so after that class graduated, we kind of took a step back and we said, all right, what is the goal? And can we create a situation where we are highly competitive in the sand, and we're pushing each other, and we're getting along, and we're going to be friends, and they're going to be in each other's lives 10 years from now. And so I think looking at how we were competing in practice, how we were setting up training to be more cooperative than individual, all of those things mattered tremendously, because what we had to do is literally take an individual sport and turn it into a team. And nobody at that time had any idea how to do it. And the kids that were coming into this space, they were all indoor kids that wanted to play D1 that weren't good enough to play D1 so they could go play beach. And so they kind of had the concept of what it was to be on a team, but they didn't necessarily know the beach game. And so I think it's been neat over the years to see the evolution of, the addition of like all of the club v club tournaments, because it gives the athletes a little bit more of an understanding of being on the team or like on the bench, but still nobody goes to the beach and sits on the bench. And so that is a very, very hard lesson to learn when you get to college. But I think that is actually a critical component of team culture and connection within the team. Of can you be on the bench and be equally as excited for the people that are in as they will be for you when it's your turn.
Wow. I
went all over the place with that, but
I think that's amazing. Now it gives us, some anchor points to talk about how were you able to change this? Why am I asking? Because a club coach, right? He has middle school girls, high school girls. They want to play D1. Their parents are very ambitious, let's say, and they want their girls to win, right? Because everybody wants their girls to play stop and club play stop. But it's a culture that stays there, right? The young ones learn that and they stay longer. How fast were you able to turn this around to this winning for winning only culture, to this winning for team culture?
That it probably took us about 4 years to fully cycle through it to get to that space where it was much more about the team. And it's still super hard. Like, we're always naturally going to see ourselves first, but understanding that it's 51%, 49%, like the team is super, super important. It took us a little while to get to that point. A lot of conversations, and like our infrastructure with our team, what we started doing, we introduced our Panther Pals. So it's an accountability partner. Someone, if you are a newcomer to the team, then you have a returner. And so you are helping each other to make sure that you're making great decisions. When we travel, Panther Pals work together for team assignments. So it's one, helping to like foster the connection between an older player and a newer player. But also if if either person is late to weights, then they get to rake the courts together and they get to spend time, kind of having those conversations. We also created committees within our team. So we have 4 committees on our team. We have a social media committee, a maintenance committee, a team events, and a recruiting committee. And so someone comes in as a freshman and they apply to whatever committee they want to be on. And they can stay on that committee for 4 years, or they can move around committees as the years go by. But it's another way of taking a chunk of the work and saying, here, like our coaching staff could do all of this, but why don't you guys take some ownership? Like let's empower you to make decisions for the team. And so again, by putting them in like 4 different groups that aren't necessarily their best friends, it's other people on the team that are in the committee. They're learning to work and communicate with other people for the good of the team. And that's been something too that's been tremendously helpful for us. So for example, team events, they will help with any kind of community service. They help oftentimes when we're traveling, picking out restaurants on the road. Maintenance is in charge of making sure spaces that we use are clean, especially when we're traveling, pushing chairs in, like that kind of courteousness. And then social media, obviously they do all of our social media and work with our sports information director. And then the recruiting committee, they do a lot of welcoming people when they're on campus and kind of staying in touch with people that are interested in our program. And so that's helped in a sense of truly empowering the people on the team that, again, they're more than an athlete. They are someone who on the business side of the team are contributing to building our brand.
Wow, that was exactly the word that came to my mind when you're talking about building a brand and building a company, right? Now, wow, I think this way of selflessness and ownership of not only their own athletes' own actions, but the heading and the journey of the whole team. That's fabulous. So they are, but are you willing to share what are the, let's say, core values or building blocks? Yeah. What a Panther is? This is us.
This is us. I love that. That's actually in our team manual. It's our building blocks. So we have 2 different ways of looking at this. The first one is the 4 agreements. Have you read this book?
Oh, I love 4 agreements.
So that has been a pillar for our program since day one. And so we talk about that, like what it is to be impeccable with your word, what it is to always do your best, what it is to not take something personally and to not make assumptions. So that really helps guide us through a lot of conflicts or spaces where people might be showing up for less than what they can. And then we talk a lot about, like, we kind of, have a little bit of a pyramid with hydration, recovery, sleep, just kind of building up to that space. But I would say from a culture concept, it's much more based on the 4 agreements and working through those. I actually spent an entire year of practicing not taking things personally. So I would come up with something and do my best, and then I would just invite criticism. And I spent a lot of time fighting back tears that year. But it was really good for my growth because I was pouring my heart into something and then asking people to help tear it down and make it better. And it really helped me to kind of have a little bit of a harder outer shell as well, and to realize when I'm taking something personally and to kind of let that go.
Hey there. Are you really serious about your D1 dreams? Playing beach volleyball in college? And does this whole recruiting process feels like a black box to you where you don't really know what to do and what the coaches are looking for? Well, you're not the only one, but I may have a solution for you. But before we'll get to that, let me ask you, are you really serious about your dreams? Because if yes, then you need to step up and take ownership of your actions. And the best way to do it is get out and start researching information. Now, there's not much information about this whole process and what coaches are looking for, is there? Well, so for this exact reason, I created this library of conversations with D1 beach coaches so you can learn and understand what are their green flags, what are their red flags, what are they looking for, who they really want on the team, who they really don't want on the team. And all this information will help you triangulate yourself and navigate this process with much more confidence and with success at the end. You can find me on YouTube or become a part of my community directly. You get way more information as a part of the community, but YouTube will do fine. So what you waiting for? Get in, I'll see you on the inside, and let's navigate the process with confidence. And if you need more help, just contact me and I'll help you figure out how to make your dreams come true. All right? So let's go.
I have to ask, is there, you said 4 agreements, is there something else to it on the, because this is so interesting and I have so many questions here, but there's also the 5th agreement, right? And
Mhm.
learning how to listen. And so is there anything outside of those, or are those the pillars?
I would say that's like the pillar of our culture. Then our 3 non-negotiables are to always give your best effort, to always show up with a great attitude, and to always communicate. And I think that's kind of standard across most programs because those things you can always control. And so that is something that I think our team does a phenomenal job of holding each other accountable. So you will see them at practice. If someone doesn't go for a ball, I've watched them multiple times be like, all right, let's just run a quick sideline, like a quick reminder. Like, we don't do that. That does not happen in our sand. So to me, I think it's really nice when coaches have the speak of, these are the things we are, these are the things we do. And it's so much more meaningful when you see the team take ownership in that.
I have to ask, Beth,
Yes.
So first of all, thank you for sharing. It's fabulous. The depth, the human depth of the understanding of what college sport can be. Now, how do you learn? How, where, and how? Coaches, very often it happens that they tend to get caught in their own box and ways of thinking, and it's really hard to get out of there.
So hard.
First of all, you get thrown in the college program or whatever club, and there's a pressure on winning, there's a pressure on doing this, but taking the step back and say, okay, I can learn. Where can I learn? Where do you learn?
So I learn because I think maybe in my mid 30s or late 30s, I came up with this rule that I have to say yes to things that scare me. And so I have gotten myself into so many situations that I would say are generally way over my head, because if it scares me, I have to say yes, not if it's dangerous. Like, I don't have to jump out of a plane.
Okay.
But if it's something in a professional, although maybe I would have to, I don't know. But if it's something in a professional space that I think, oftentimes people might be like, oh, I'm not ready for that. Or somebody doesn't want to hear from me. My rule is if somebody asks me to do that, and it makes me go, ooh, that sounds scary, I have to say yes. And I think because of that, I've learned a lot. Other like big pictures, I work super hard to learn from other coaches, from parents, from the people on our team, from other beach volleyball coaches. I'm reading, my goal this break is to read The Anxious Generation.
Oh, wow. I haven't heard of it. That sounds fabulous.
Yes, Benny at LMU. I was talking to her over the summer at a camp, and we were talking about some of the different learning challenges that we're seeing in people coming into college. And she was like, you have to read this book. Okay, so I got it. And it's like, this scares me. Like, that's my goal this break, is to read that. So I think, in all honesty, for the purposes of our team here at Georgia State, the biggest tool that I have for learning are the athletes on the team. And we ask them, we do like biweekly meetings, and we ask at that point for any of their feedback. And then at the end of every semester, on the semester review, we have a line that's like, what did you complain about this semester? That's how we get better. So if you are brave enough, like, we're not going to get mad at you, but if you're brave enough to share some of those things or your observations, then that's how we can truly be better at serving this program. And years ago, one of the girls on our team was like, well, you clearly have favorites. And I was like, okay, that's great. Can you give me an example of how I would treat somebody who is one of my favorites? And she was like, yeah, easy. When one of your favorites wants extra reps, you say sure. And when one of your non-favorites doesn't want extra reps or wants extra reps, you don't give them extra reps. And I was like, wow, okay. So then I started, with that lens, started looking at practices, and I'm like, all right, who do they think my favorites are? Because I don't know who my favorites are. But that was so helpful, and something that I don't think I would have ever paid attention to. And when I went back and started thinking about it, it was probably some of the players who weren't taking the step that we wanted them to take, or they were like somehow not completing the rep that we were wanting them to do. And so I wanted that if they wanted to learn more, I wanted them to stay in that process. But it was super helpful for me to have that feedback. because one, I never want to be a coach that has favorites, because I just don't think that's a fun program to be in. And it was really eye-opening in the sense of, how am I treating people equally and fairly at practice?
How are you able to keep a mirror, or how are you able to not to track that, but have the right, be honest with yourself? Do your assistants give you feedback, or with these biweekly meetings, do athletes, how do you, because I feel like this is really hard, because you have an athlete, you see that there is a potential in improving game or whatever, or you really want to help that partnership because it's going to be your, number 2 flight number. It doesn't matter,
right?
Because innately you are of a service, right? You are a winning leader, but you are of a service to these girls that come here and you are essentially changing the trajectories of their life. It's not 4 years, it's 40 years decision coming to a program.
Oh, I love that.
Because all the connections, right? All the knowledge,
course,
all the ways you help them understand how to deal with adversity and how to collaborate and everything. So how are you staying honest to yourself?
I love this question. I honestly don't know if I have thought about it that much. We ask constantly for feedback from the team. And I know I've said that already, but to the point that I will invite them, and it's always an open door policy. Like, come in before practice, design practice, like help us build what you guys feel that you need or what we're missing. I work really hard to set expectations and be very clear about those things so that it's a little bit easier for people to provide feedback. I would say in the past, I've leaned very heavily on our assistant coaches. So something that I think I recognized when I first started was how important it was going to be to have someone on our staff who has been in the exact position that the humans on the team are in. And so in the second year, when we had an assistant coach, she had graduated from UAB and she played in the first ever duel. And it was UAB and FSU. She played at UAB, they did not win, but she had such an amazing experience playing both indoor and beach that she came here to Georgia State for her grad school, and she worked with both our indoor and beach programs. And so having her perspective, and her name is Kirsten Gallagher, and she's just amazing pillar of strength of human. And she would argue with me. Like, she would say, no, this is a terrible idea. And I no, this is what we're going to do. She's like, you can't do that. She's like, I'm going to walk away, but you cannot do that. And so I was so lucky. And she was here for 7 years. She built this program with me. And I was so lucky to have her, because she was someone too that taught me to lean into debate and lean into conflict and don't back away from it. Seek to understand what the people around you are trying to say. And so having her start the program was critical, I think, to be where we are even today. And then since then, pretty much everybody that's worked on our staff played on our team. So much to the point that Colin Wilson at Coastal is like, yeah, whenever you guys open up your assistant coach position, everybody knows you're just going to hire someone from your team. So there's no point in even applying. And I don't think I had realized it until he pointed that out to me. But I think that speaks volumes to the culture that we're building, and also trying to create opportunities for women in the sport to stay in coaching, because it's certainly something that women tend to get out of coaching more so than men. And then you have all these young girls that have representatives who are males as their coaches and not as many women. And so I'm always a little sensitive to making sure that we're creating those opportunities. And so the next assistant coach that we got to work with Wayne Hawley for a year, and then Tiffany Kramer stepped into that position, and she had played at Stetson indoor and beach, and then played here for her 5th year. And so again, it's someone who has that experience of being a college beach volleyball player, something that I don't have, and being able to really lean into them for that perspective of what it feels like to be playing this sport in this space with all the pressure. And it's really incredible to me how playing professionally, I felt, a lot of pressure, but watching what kids do in college, it seems so much harder than playing for just yourself, because now you have a whole team on your back, and that's not something, even like indoor volleyball, it's never just down to 2 people. It's still half the team that's on the floor. Whereas in beach, if the duel comes down, it's 2 people on a roster of now 19, that are going to make or break the W or the L. And I think that having someone who has been in that space, who has felt those feelings, that's so helpful in guiding a lot of the decision making that we do as a staff to serve the team.
Wow. I like every single time you give me this wonderfully deep answer, I'm just blown away that, it's
Thank
just,
you.
these are things that people don't talk about, right? These are the things that are not so known or not known at all, not talked about in a high school setting or a club setting.
Sure.
But those are the things that, as we agree, they just make the life of that player going forward, right? If they have the guidance, if they have a safe space where they can make mistakes and where they can grow, and if they have a guide like yourself, it's just fabulous. It gives them so much safety to really discover who they are and
Sure.
who they can be.
And
So-
to explore. And I think that's one of the neatest things about a team is you can really mess up badly and your teammates are going to work through it and forgive you. Whereas I think outside of teams, you don't have that kind of safety.
In what way? Meaning personally or
Personally, like I think professionally, like athletically, we know everybody, like we all make mistakes athletically. If mistakes didn't exist, sports wouldn't be a thing. Like perfection it would just ruin sports. If somebody was perfect, that wouldn't be fun. But I think personally, and as people are coming from high school and getting into adulthood, it's really hard to be away from your parents the first time you're sick. And what you say to your roommate when she's trying to help you may really be hurtful because you're sick and you didn't actually mean what you said because your mom's not there. And so I think a lot of that is just like, it's very protected space and they can learn together and they're going to have some conflicts and they're going to argue over who is supposed to be cleaning up the kitchen or who, like those things make such a big difference in how they move forward from here. And so I think having a team as opposed, like having your teammate as a roommate is much different than having some person that you just got put together with in college that you can just agree to never speak if you don't get along. Like a teammate, you got to kind of work through some of that and find common ground.
Well, this is interesting. So are you intentionally putting freshmen with older players or how are you matching them?
For roommates?
For roommates, yeah.
Yeah. So for roommates, our freshmen all live together when they come in. And they live on campus in the dorms. And the dorms are, parents love them because the security is very high. So being in downtown Atlanta, people are always really concerned because I think Atlanta is just unfairly portrayed in the media. But this city is really awesome. And so security for our dorms is fantastic. So parents love it. By the second semester, freshmen are usually so annoyed with the security that they're ready to move into apartments. And so once they decide to move off, once they finish their freshman year, they can live with whoever they want to. And I think that's one of the coolest things is 95% of them will choose to live with people on the team. Like every couple of years, we'll have one person that is maybe living with other athletes or two beach volleyball players who are living with a soccer athlete or an indoor volleyball athlete. And so I think the fact that when they move off campus or when they're, when they can choose who they're going to live with, they almost always choose to live together.
This is fabulous. This speaks volumes to you guys, how, what kind of environment you're fostering and growing and what kind of approach and space you're giving these girls that really navigating like freshmen coming in with all these, different attitudes and everything. It just must be so difficult, right?
It is. They're puppies, and they're just learning and everybody's come off of a high school experience where they were a pretty big deal. And definitely, finishing up your senior year, your parents are so happy for you. Like you're kind of leaving this very kumbaya space in life and you get into this space and all of a sudden, like, it's not nearly the same. Like you're no longer the person that everybody on the team is, looking up to. And I'm kind of learning how to reframe that space and appreciate others. Like I remember very clearly when I was in college, I was like studying one night and I wadded up a piece of paper and I tried to throw it into the garbage can and I missed. And I remember thinking, my mom's like not here. I have to get up and throw that away. Like it was such an eye-opening moment, which is such a silly thing to say in hindsight. But I think that that's just a huge part of what college is. It's like learning who you're going to be, where you're going to show up, and how you're going to support the people around you.
So what do you think are the biggest challenges the girls, from your experience, are facing coming as a freshman?
Yeah, so I think recently in the last couple of years from a athletic space is that these really high level performing junior players have learned how to shine independently, because that's what helps you stand out in the recruiting process. And they don't have partnership skills. So they don't make the mistake. It's their partner. It's the set that they got. And it's not like they're blameful. They're not blaming people, but it's just the space I think that they end up playing in as juniors, because they're very individualized. And so I think that's one of the biggest obstacles as they come in, is recognizing their communication style, what their energy is in a competitive moment, and how you can match that up. And in all honesty, like helping the freshmen to understand it's okay to be a little vulnerable, because I think they are very scared in a lot of cases and have like this shield of armor up around them, and letting them know like, hey, the more mistakes you make this year, the better you're going to be by the time we get to spring. So like make a load of mistakes in the fall, own them, understand why you make them, figure out an adjustment to try to do something different, whether it's personal or athletic. But I think that's the biggest thing that we see athletically right now, is developing like a team mentality and the ability to truly make the other person on the court better because you're on the court with her. Yeah, I think that's the biggest one. And it's a hard one. That's
a hard one, and it's so deep and it's so wide. So I'll because you strike me as a master of systems, so you have to develop so many systems and things that would work. And you told me about your committees within the team and now you showed me the Venn diagrams, how you're putting things together. And it's just like all systems, so this can work. This whole business unit can work, right? Tell me more about this individualism in the team sports. I always had the impression that, volleyball and beach volleyball were so unique because that was the only sport where athlete cannot, under any circumstance, succeed as a unit. You just need at least another touch, right? Yep. Or two.
You need somebody else.
Yeah, you need somebody else. So that's one part. Now we have in the club season, or in the high school clubs, let's say, we have the club competition. So we have all these things, but you're telling me now that this is the biggest thing that I'm coming across. What do you think it stems out of, and what do you think can be a solution? How to remedy that?
So I think a lot of it is, for example, years ago, we had one of the athletes that was on our team. Her name is Kelly Dorn, and she played almost her entire juniors career with a girl named Kate Privet. And they got into arguments, and they knew how to work through arguments, and they knew how to trust each other, and they knew what the other person was going to do under pressure. And they're both very undersized. I think they won a national championship title when they were 16s, and they played together through 18s. And I don't know that they were necessarily great friends outside of volleyball, but they learned how to build a partnership. They learned how to successfully solve problems under pressure. They learned how to take accountability, and they learned how to make the other person a little bit better. And so I think they also probably didn't have a lot of other options in their club of people who were at their level. So it wasn't like, oh, I'm going to play with Kate this weekend, and then I'm going to go play with Jessica next weekend because we're all trying to play together. I don't know that there are a lot of other players that were at that level that they were playing. And I think what's happened is the entire level of the juniors has raised so much that any weekend, if I live in Tennessee, there's even in Tennessee, Missouri, like some of the smaller hotbeds, there's still 10 different people that I could play with. And so maybe I'm becoming a better player by playing with somebody different every single week. And if I play with one person and we don't necessarily see eye to eye, then we don't play together again. And when you get into college, if your coach needs you to play with someone that you don't see eye to eye with, you're going to play with them, as long as, like, in general, as long as the team needs you to do that. And so that's an entire skill set that you can avoid building in the junior space, that now you're in the college space, everything feels a little bit harder, and you might be having to play with someone that you don't necessarily want to be on the court with. And I think that's hard. It's a very hard thing to learn. And I don't think that many of us as college coaches would ever put two people on the court that don't want to be together. But I've had situations in our team where it's like, this is what the team needs you to do. Like, I understand that you guys don't see eye to eye. So here are the agreements that we're going to have when you're on the court together, because this is the best thing for the team, you know. And if there's another option and we can separate you guys in a couple of weeks, we'll do that. But for right now, you have to find a way to make this work. And I think not, like, truly just being able to avoid discomfort in partnerships in the junior space it's a very hard thing then to get into the college space and realize you can't avoid it. Did I answer the question?
Absolutely. And I'm going to still ask the last question. What do you think should be or can be the remedy now?
Okay, yeah.
Because the space is so, how to say, you know it yourself, right? I want to play with Jessica because we won a tournament, but also, you know, sometimes it's a little hard. And for the next tournament, I'm already playing with Addie. And for the next tournament, I'm playing with Julia. And because parents are doing this, you know, partner with as many girls, which I think is, on one hand, is great.
It's amazing. It makes you versatile. Like,
yes,
that's great.
But now we're missing the bridge that can help us go through these players with benefits, to say so, right? Into a space where, with that one player, if you would be able to resolve these few basic issues that you guys are encountering under pressure, you guys can soar this much. So what is, in your eyes, the remedy?
Yeah, and I think it's different for every single family, but what if instead of playing with 4 different people in a month, you play with one person for a month and then another person for another month? And that doesn't always work with families and travel schedules, but that might be a way to kind of work through some of those, know who's going to take the middle on serve receive without having to talk about it every time, you know, just on a very, very basic level. That might be something where you kind of agree to, hey, let's play together for these next 3 weeks and see what we can learn, and then reevaluate after that and see if we want to play together some more, if we want to play with different people. And that was something in my career. And I would love to hear about your experience too. But for me, the person that I played the most with, her name is Susanna, and she was from Romania, and we just called each other old shoes, because at any point we played together so much, we could just get back together. And it was literally like putting on an old pair of shoes that was super comfortable. And she knew that, you know, where I was going to be strong and where I was not going to be so strong. And I knew where she was going to be spicy. And it was an easy thing to step back into, because we'd spent so much time together. And I think that is just something, you know, and we would evaluate after every season, are we going to try and play together again next year? And I think that's something at the juniors level that maybe it's not quite as long-term, but more than just a week. So that if, you know, we hit a couple bumps in the road in one tournament, we get to go over them and smooth them out a little bit in the next one.
I think this is...
I was going to say also, I also think it's really great, because I know everybody always wants to play with someone who's better than them, right? Because you want to be able to play at the very highest level. And so I think, and it's super hard for people in high school to understand, especially because they're in this hyper sensitive space for recruiting and they always want to show their best. But I think sometimes you can see some of someone's best qualities when they are truly the stronger player, and how much they can help their partner to be a better player, communicator, athlete, all of those things. And kind of really stepping into that space and not being frustrated that you didn't get the partner you wanted for the weekend and you're playing with this person who's not quite at your level. But I think as college coaches, that's like one of the neatest things. If you can watch someone, you're like, wow, you're not going to get served a single ball for this entire tournament. So how are you going to make your partner's job easier? I think that's a really neat skill to see in someone that I think is very undervalued in the junior space.
That is so true. I have to say, even though I'm asking, but just sharing that I know the old shoes feeling. That
yes.
a partner, no strings attached, but you stepped on the court and you feel like, okay, there's one and one does not equal two at those situations, but it gets to 3, 4, because that chemistry, that relationship, that selflessness, the fact that you don't have to hone your ego, you know what I
Right.
mean? It just
Sure.
comes up naturally, and that boosts the performance. And also sometimes pairing up girls with intentionally for tournaments with girls that are under the level of their performance. For some types, it works in a way that they stepped up. They stepped up. They just, oh, okay, I have to take care of way more things now.
Yep.
Walk more, I have to run more, I have to pass more, I have to, and it's an interesting experiment to see
It
what
truly
kind of
is.
type of players you are dealing with.
It truly is. One of the things that I was working a clinic over Thanksgiving break, and it was like 4 courts that were going, and they were working up to get to the top court. And I noticed there weren't enough people on the bottom court. And so I went up to one of the very best players on the top court, and I was like, hey, can you jump down to court 4? And she did not bat an eye. She's like, absolutely. And to me, that speaks so much to who that person is, that instead of being like, well, I'm on the top. Yeah, sure. No, I'm happy to go. And she went and I watched her because it was super interesting to see. She was high-fiving everybody on court 4. She was doing everything she could to help whichever partner she was playing with in that moment. And I think that quality really serves people well in the college space, much more so than being, the person that everybody wants setting every single ball, because everybody at the college space is going to figure out how to set. But not everybody's going to figure out how to hold somebody's hand and pull them up.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting. How do you handle, or how do you use as tools these kind of players?
Mm-hmm.
You have a great player, but she might be let's say a little cocky. And then, how are you placing her into this whole puzzle? Is this something that does not even happen at your team because of the way you are recruiting and you're choosing players based on their culture? Or did it ever happen, and how did you handle that?
Yeah, I think when you have someone who has a little bit of an attitude, or they're a little bit arrogant, I think it's important to talk about it as a team. And so we'll speak to the individual, and it's not even something that, hey, we're coming down on you. Like, part of the reason that you're in this space is because of your unwavering belief in yourself. So I don't want to chip away at that.
Mm-hmm.
I also want you to understand how your teammates are interpreting it. So when you say something in practice that might offend someone, let's hug it out after practice, acknowledge it, and then move on with our day, because our team will always be stronger and better when we have differences of opinions, when we have diversity in our beliefs, when we have diversity in our intensity levels. We can't have everybody being angry at all times. Like, that's not an enjoyable experience, and that team is not going to be super successful. But if you don't have anybody who's angry and driving and pushing, that team is also not going to be very successful. Mm-hmm. So you need all of these pieces, and it's really healthy, I think, as a team to recognize, like, hey, that person is our chirpy leader. Like, she's just going to mouth off a little bit. And when she does, you either take it personally or you don't, and that's where we come to the 4 agreements. Like, you can let what she's saying get under your skin, or you can decide, hey, that's how she plays best. I'm going to let her do her thing. I'm going to do mine. But I think the more we can embrace it and talk about it, it makes it a little bit easier to manage it. And so we can have those moments where it's like, you may have gone over the line a little bit, so let's address this.
Now that sounds fabulous. I'm interested. Who initiates these questions, or who initiates these talks, or after the game hugs, as you say, let's hug it out? Is that you because you feel like something was off, or do you leave it on the players?
So we have a chain of communication.
Mm-hmm.
And so at first it becomes the player's responsibility, but if they feel like they're at an impasse, then they can bring in someone from our team council, which is our leadership group. And if that doesn't feel successful, or if a team council member is involved in it, then they can bring in a coach. They can also come grab one of us at any point in time. And we actually had this happen this semester at one of our inter squad events, and it got heated in a game. Things were said. Some people interpreted it this. The person who said it didn't mean it like that. And our athletic trainer came down and she was like, "You might need to go up to that court." I was like, "Okay." So I went up. I'm like, "Hey, like, what's going on?" And I started hearing all the different perspectives, and okay. So after the game, and luckily it was some of our senior members on the team that were involved in it, and they have gotten really good at embracing conflict. And so of the 4 people or 5 people who were involved, we had 4 of them. One person was not yet ready to address it. And we sat there for probably 15 minutes, talking, arguing, crying, repeating what they think is being said, and just solving it. Because you can't go back and change the words, but you can understand how your words might affect someone. And so just trying to get to that point. But I think like that's something that I missed out on in college, was having a space where you can have different opinions and you can argue them, and not because someone is right or someone is wrong, but so that someone can understand where you're coming from. And that is something, again, going back to Kirsten, our first assistant coach, that I learned that from her, that it's really important to create that space for young women so that they feel like they have the right to an opinion, and they have a right to voice their opinion, and they can learn how to argue their opinion and screw it up sometimes and say way too much and then have to apologize and try it again later. And I think that's a really important thing and an incredible benefit that you can get from a college team.
This is amazing. This is amazing how much you are empowering your athletes,
We work. That's a huge piece of what we try to do.
And creating a safe space to do all these things and talk about it and engage in those conversations, because to be honest, they are very difficult, especially when you earlier mentioned that the girls are coming with that sort of armor, right, around them. How long does it, on average, because I know every person is different, take to let them understand that they can drop it and they can be vulnerable?
I think generally when people come back from their sophomore year, I think you spend your freshman fall is an amazing emotional roller coaster. And I think it's some of the most tumultuous times in someone's life, especially coming to a city like Atlanta, that I feel like is generally about 5 days ahead of the day that we're actually in. Like it just goes. And so it's really easy to get here and feel like, whoo, everything's super fast. So that first semester is just kind of like a blur, and you're trying to understand the why, and you don't understand the why. All you know is you've just worked for 4 or 5 years to get recruited, and you thought you did the hard part. And what you're doing right now is way harder than what you had gone through to get there. And then you get into season, and season goes by so fast because we travel every weekend. And then as we're wrapping up season, things start clicking for the freshmen, and the why starts resonating with them, and they start feeling the power that they have, and they start taking the ownership, and they start taking accountability. And it's not a super consistent thing. It's like learning how to tie your shoes. Some days you know how to do it, and some days you forgot how to do it. But ultimately, you're going to get there. And I think when you see them coming back for the sophomore year, they come back with a different look in their eye. Like they understand the why, they understand the purpose, they understand the challenge, and they're ready for it.
This is fabulous. That's amazing. Year, 2 semesters, that just, speaks. I will ask you later, because you are clearly finding athletes and types that you feel like will get into that puzzle more easily. But before we get to that, and before we get to this recruiting, now you have described wonderfully this whole process of athletes being there, and your culture and your understanding, and where are you headed. Now I will lighten it up a little bit. What are the 2 things, one that's making you smile the most ahead of this next season, and what is the one that's making you feel the heaviest in front of this next season?
It's the same thing. We have 5 upperclassmen, 5 sophomores, and 5 freshmen on our team. So we have a situation where I think we'll have 1 person graduate, and pretty much every single person on our team this year will come back next year. So what we are tasked with right now, what makes me smile, are the challenges ahead Specifically with the Sun Belt, we have won the Sun Belt tournament the last 3 years. And so I think people just assume we're going to win the Sun Belt. And I'm looking around and the other schools in the Sun Belt are really strong this year. And we're just going to be a team that if we can get through the mental toughness, the skill execution, and the strategy implementation, if we can learn to do those things quickly, consistently, and under pressure, then we will battle it out and we will be right there at the end of the season. If we as a staff aren't able to create that intensity in the training environment to really help us start season, we won't be there because the Sun Belt is so competitive. And so I think what makes me smile is the work that I get to do this year to help build it. So normally by the time we get to season, I tell our team all the time, like, I just kind of become like the soccer mom, and I drive you guys places and I make sure you have food. And I turn in a piece of paper with a lineup, and they literally do almost all of the rest of the work because we've had so many returners for so many years. And so this year, our staff gets to be the soccer mom, but then we also have to be super engaged, and we'll still drive a lot more this year than I think we've had to in the past. And so that's exciting for me because it's a little bit of a different learning space, and we have different types of learners. And so figuring out how we can show up for the best of them. For example, we already found out in the fall that I make one of our freshmen really nervous. So I'm not going to be on her court very often because I don't need to add more pressure to her. And she's great with our assistant coaches. And so just like figuring out those nuances, that's what is making me smile. And at the same time, that's also like making me a little nervous because if I don't get this right, then it's going to be on me if we don't accomplish that goal of winning the Sun Belt. But I love that challenge. So I think it makes me smile more than it makes me frown. But it's certainly the double-edged sword right now.
Okay, that was bigger than I expected.
Oh,
And I'm going to ask you. No, thank you for that. Thank you for that. Usually it's like, we're dealing with a little bit of this, but this is like such a complex situation. Do you feel like you're amping up the intensity of your trainings, or does your athletic coach amps up every year? Like, are you performance wise, the team, is it higher than it was last year?
I feel like the game keeps evolving. I don't know that the people are more athletic. I don't know that they're not necessarily jumping higher. They're not necessarily running a lot faster, but the game and the skills within the game are evolving. And so these athletes have a much different skill set than athletes did 4 years ago. And so I think to that degree, they might be a little bit more athletic, especially with second ball contacts, with all of the optioning, vertical setting, like just some of the spread offenses and things like that. I feel like that is really starting to take root in the college space. Whereas like 4 or 5 years ago, it was just like face and send. And so I think making offenses a lot more weaponized, essentially, from each contact, might suggest that these players are a little bit more athletic, but I think truly a lot of that credit goes to the coaches at the juniors levels, because they are understanding how to really teach these skills and implement them into the training. Like when I was playing, they would tell us, like, just don't use your hands when you set. And now it's like, don't ever bump set, put your hands on every ball, like find a way, sometimes set it over your shoulders, and so I think that coaches at the beginning level and at the juniors level have gotten a lot more comfortable and a lot more courageous with teaching a lot of the skills. So when people are getting to college, it's putting more pressure on me as a coach to make sure I'm staying on top of that, and that I'm teaching and I'm using words as clear as possible to help kind of facilitate some of that growth.
Did you like this conversation? It was pretty good, wasn't it? I have more for you. I have conversations with D1 coaches, experts, and all the tools and guides and whatever you can think of to succeed on your D1 journey and fulfill your D1 dreams. So what you waiting for? Jump right in, and I'll see you on the inside. And if you need more help, just contact me and I'll help you make your dreams come true. All right? Until later.